Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. As everyone knows around here, we do a lot of sports, eat a lot of crab cakes, and getting ready to eat a lot of turkey and probably swallow a lot of eggnog before it's all over with. Our friends at the Maryland Lottery send us out with the Ravens scratch-offs to give away during the Maryland Crab Cake Tour, and we're visiting all of our sponsors. We're going to be at Coco's, we're going to be at Costas, we're going to be at Pappas, we're going to be all around State Fair, Fadley's for sure downtown, having some crab cakes for the holidays and shipping those out. All that brought to you by our friends as well at Jiffy Lube Multicare. We're in the midst of 26 years of doing this crazy WNST Baltimore Positive thing and our WNST Oyster Tour provided by our friends Curio Wellness and Foreign Daughter, as well as Liberty Pure Solutions, 1-800-CLEAN-WATER. They keep our water clean and keep your water clean as well, just like the oysters keep the bay nice and clean. So we have these delicious crab cakes. I don't know if she's had a crab cake yet or not. She's sort of new to Baltimore as part of our ongoing education series here and our long partnership with Coppin State University for more than just sports. We still run the games we put on AM 1570, but we've been trying to have some elevated conversations about the community and the folks that power up Coppin State and our partners there and our partnership. She has a new fancy title. She's come in, and I want to make sure that I get all this right because interim provost and vice president of academic affairs. She has written books about all sorts of things, has lived abroad in London, as well as worked at Florida State and a bunch of different places, Albany State. She comes to us honest from West Baltimore right now. And first of all, I want to welcome you in. Dr. Chanta Haywood is our guest. And first things first, crab cake. I've had people shellfish intolerant. I've had all sorts of
Look,
things. Where are you on the crab cake scale here?
look, let me tell you, Dr. Anthony Jenkins doesn't know this, but one of the key factors in my decision to come here to work with him in his interim capacity was because of Baltimore's reputation with the crab cakes.
Well,
So I am on the search for the perfect crab cake.
Well, as we tape this, we're about an hour from lunchtime. I mean, I'll pick you up. Let's go.
All
We'll
right,
just
hey, that's a
throw you in
date.
the passenger seat and away we go.
I'm
Uh,
serious. That's a date. So come on.
it is, especially in light of the election. We are taping this right in the aftermath of that, as well as some Raven victories. You can find all that out at Baltimore Positive. But the reputation of Baltimore outside. So you might not know a lot about me. I'm a lifer. East Baltimore, Dundalk, been here forever, had the radio station. That's why I do Baltimore Positive. And part of it was about a decade ago, the last time the guy got elected here, our reputation and where we were with crime and this and that. We always think, how does it look outside of the city? And how do we recruit from educational doctors straight on down student to our area in our city? And I'm always worried about our reputation elsewhere. And then I find good people, Dr. Jenkins, even though he's been a Washington football fan, I'll call him a good man. Coming from Washington, coming from other areas, even Westmore, who's up in New York, wherever comes back, wants to run Maryland, right? Brandon being here. I'm talking about political leaders, but then there are people that get recruited into this and say, why would someone leave London, Florida, California, wherever you're from, to come here and be a part of this? And I like leaving that on the doorstep of our new transplants who want to learn all the great crab cake places
Mhm.
here, Dr. Haywood.
I did so. So you're asking, what made me decide to come?
Sure.
Well, there were when I was talking to people and letting them know that I was considering moving to Baltimore, people did make me aware. Well, the first thing you can imagine, some of the people said, that's where the wire was. And
I still haven't watched it. I admitted that. I had
I
David
never
Simon.
did. I've never watched it either, but a
Yeah, I
lot of
said I
people.
live downtown. This few years where I lived for 19 years. I lived at the 23rd floor at Harbor Court, right downtown. So this was the view. This was my sunrise in mornings. And so I love Baltimore, but I often think what would make others come here and
Well,
fall in love with it, want to have a life here and make a
yeah.
life here.
Well, I have come to love it. And I live in an area called Bolton Hill. And I am absolutely loving just the cultural surroundings. Edgar Allan Poe, having lived at Zora Neale Hurston, actually lived a block from where I am. And as a person who, my PhD is in American literature, and she was a writer who I taught in my classes, and someone whose texts and books I've read and studied, and someone whose approach to life was kind of mimicked mine. I was excited about it. I'm loving all of the cultural events, all of the arts, and the richness of the community.
I think that's everything that Dr. Jenkins was wooed about when I first sat with him a couple of years ago, just talking about what brings leaders to Baltimore that then can other inspire other leaders, and certainly at the educational level. I think we are known for institutions of learning. We are known for hospitals and our legacy here. We want to be more tech. We'll always be crab cake and seafood in the bay and all of that. But I think when people think about coming here, especially from the Coppin State perspective, it's what can we do to inspire other young people? And I eat some crab cakes over on the east side of town. I don't want to mention Morgan in the Coppin, but the Coco's is right by Morgan, and I just see what these edge. And I live in Towson, so I'm near Towson University, and and I see what a university can do to sort of bring the lifeblood of a community back.
Mhm. Well, definitely the educational system here in Maryland was a key factor in my coming, and also Coppin State, and working with Dr. Anthony Jenkins and seeing the impact that he has had at the university, considering its rich history and its significant in the Baltimore community. So definitely a key factor. What I'm loving also is his innovation and his willingness to allow me to execute some of the ideas that I have to continue this legacy here at Coppin.
What is interim provost and vice president? So it's a fancy title, academic affairs, and you do come from this honest. I've done a little research on you. I like to do that before I have folks on, but just your background in writing and in literature, and more
Mhm.
than that, I think at every step. I mean, you were a teacher, a faculty member, a faculty.
Mhm.
I mean, you've come at this a long way from probably when
Yeah,
you went to school, just thinking, I'm going to
yeah.
teach young people the things I've learned, but I mean, fundraising, just all
Mhm.
sorts of avenues that have, challenged you and led you here.
They really have, and I have worked the full gamut in the academic enterprise, having been a faculty member, a graduate dean, an assistant provost, an associate provost, and just having worked on all facets of the university. So, and it positions me, those experiences have positioned me well to take on this challenge here of being the provost and vice president for academic affairs. Now, the provost today serves a very different role than what it was originally, in medieval
I think
times.
of it a fancy title for the dean of professors, and I mean, I think of it a little bit in the funny way, sort of the Animal House provost. But I'm thinking like, what is a modern provost?
So,
I mean, everything comes to your desk, correct?
yeah,
You and Dr.
everything does.
Jenkins,
So a
right?
modern provost and vice president for academic affairs handles almost every aspect of the university. We deal with faculty, faculty teaching, faculty credentialing, ensuring that our faculty stay up on their professional growth and professional development, making sure that they are on top of the recent knowledge in their fields. That means providing faculty with all kinds of opportunities to stay on top of the disciplines and the knowledge that's being produced in their disciplines. And then on top of that, we are responsible for ensuring that our students get the best academic experiences that they can get, exposing them to different opportunities to do research, to do internships, to do all kinds of academic enhancement. Then, on top of that, we are working collaboratively with the staff. All of the staff on campus are responsible for making sure that we put everything in place to make sure that the academic enterprise is functioning very well. Then we deal with our external stakeholders, with the federal government, with the local, with the state government to ensure that we have the funding, the access, the opportunities that we need to execute our mission.
That's why we talk because a lot of times we've thought of just a basketball program, and I get together with Juan or get together with Larry Stewart for over the years because we've done a lot with Coppin State sports here.
Mhm.
And the thing for me in seeing young people, and it's been a number of years, some of these folks are in the Olympics, former guest of the show who've represented other countries. And I would have Sherman Reed on from your baseball coach, and he'd say, "Oh, I've got recruits from Hawaii playing baseball here," and I'm like, I'm not sure that outside of the bubble that is Coppin State and West Baltimore, and part of it is a really neat little place that for someone like you can come in and really know people that when you go to, and I know you had worked at Florida State, I've been to Tallahassee. That's a ginormous campus with lots and lots of people. There is something about the personal touch of being at a smaller institution and coming in where you are, where you get to know students, you get to touch them a little bit, but they do come from just a wide, broad background of folks that come to Coppin State. And I'm not sure that everyone really knows that outside of West Baltimore.
Yeah, I don't think they do, but our students are, I'm telling you, from all over the world, and they are diverse in their thinking, in their living, in their outlook, in their cultural expressivity. And Coppin being so small, that's one of the things that has endeared me to it. And the campus is absolutely beautiful. It is gorgeous. And yes, you get this personal, almost family feel when you're on campus. I walk on the campus every day just to enjoy the greenery, just to enjoy the greetings that I get from the students who now know me personally, come up to me, they hug me, I hug them back. We talk about what's going on in their academics. And that kind of exchange is something that you don't get on a regular basis in larger campuses like the one at Florida State. It's not that we don't have that degree of connectivity, but it's very different on a campus like this one. And the students are so open and inclusive and embracing of each other. I'm noticing that as well.
Dr. Chanta Haywood is our guest. She is, and I'm going to give the whole title here, interim provost and vice president of academic affairs as part of our Coppin State partnership and the flagship. We run the games, we talk about that, but I want to talk more impact for the university and folks coming. Your background's interesting. I was a little unclear. Were you in London for all of your stay at Florida State or back and forth Tallahassee? I just find people's experiences, especially when they have spent time abroad and
Mhm.
during an election week here, we talk about folks that have passports and use them, folks that have been other places, would have a different ideology and certainly a different life experience. And it seems to me you've been a lot of places, but I'm not sure how long you were in Europe.
So I was there during the summer, and I was there on behalf of Florida State, directing a program there called Communications Abroad, Communications in London. So I directed that program for Florida State last summer, in addition to teaching a class there. And the class was on persuasive writing, teaching students how to write to persuade in various aspects. And the city of London was the classroom. So if we're talking about persuading an audience over to making a decision or persuading the audience over to a position that you're taking, we will go to different parts of the city and then I'll talk about, this particular painting in this museum. How would you persuade an audience over to your perspective of it? So we use the City of London as the classroom per se to execute and illustrate some of the ideas and some of the notions that I was talking about in the classroom.
Go to Churchill's bunker and talk about real persuasion that he went through in the 40s, right?
All of that.
Persuading all of
Yes,
his people that
yes,
they were going to be okay from this
yes,
crazy bunk. I mean, we're talking about a
yeah.
classroom setting there, nothing like that,
All,
right?
all of all of that. And the students, and it brings the concepts and the theories and the notions to life, and they have a different perspective on it, when you can go and do just as you just noted and point out um, times and places in history where people actually are using those very elements and principles of persuasion that I was talking about in the class. And one of the most exciting exercises that we did was to convince students, try to persuade students at universities all over the world about the importance of going somewhere and studying abroad. And they did so doing photojournals that were persuasive, doing a blog that was persuasive. So giving them the opportunity to use London as a way to and as a classroom to kind of explore those principles of persuasion.
I used to use travel just for good times and music and, all of that. And I had been to Amsterdam probably 6, 7 times in my life and finally went to the Anne Frank house summer ago.
Mhm.
Just a different, and I read the work and I studied it. There's something different and maybe being in my 50s a little different than being in my 20s, but there is just something about every time I go to New York, and I went this week, especially on the backside of the election. I become Holden Caulfield, and the Catcher in the Rye catches me, and I think about the works that I read and the Steinbeck works and the works that you were a part of that sort of led you down this pathway of a lifetime of education and educating other folks, that it really begins with reading and something we really take for granted, right?
It really does. And I always tell my students, it also is reading and it's also critical thinking. How you think, what's your outlook on life and on different perspectives. And so I always tell my students that your writing, when you try to write, is only as good as your thinking is critical.
Well,
So
that's all about communication, right? I
it
mean,
it,
where
it
where
really
we
is.
are.
It's
Yeah.
all about communication. Hold on a second. Yes.
No worries. Dr.
Mhm,
Chanta Haywood is our guest. She is the interim provost and vice president of all things at Coppin State Academic Affairs. We're trying to learn about all of this stuff, and we're going to get to crab cakes and get to all of that. For you coming to this campus, and you've been here, shortly, lately, this summer. What is the recurring theme of what you hear from students about concerns? Oftentimes, I'm trying to get into the minds of these devices and folks our age not having them for long periods of time, not even having email or an internet. I mean, I always see the card catalog and the Dewey Decimal System that I grew up with
mhm,
and thinking about how much different it would be to be an 18, 19, 20-year-old person making their way in the world and what their concerns would be on a college campus as they come to you.
mhm. Yeah, students who are coming to me are expressing concerns about preparedness, being ready for the workforce when they leave the university. So we're putting in place, we have already in place, but we're enhancing those things that are in place to give them some security and certainty that they are ready to go into the workforce and do well. That's one thing. Another thing is how do they incorporate technology and use AI, for example, ethically and appropriately when they leave the university and go into the workforce. So students are very concerned about that, and they are watching us as faculty members and as universities kind of navigate how we can utilize something as like AI in the classroom appropriately and preparing them for the workforce.
Dr. Hayward, you're going to make me a student. I'm going to have to come back and learn all this stuff, right? If
Well,
I'm going
come
to stay
on. We
relevant, right?
Yeah, come on. We need your experience and your experienced perspective in
Oh
the
man, the back to
classroom.
school thing
Can
for
you
me, I
imagine
don't
that?
know. I don't know if I can handle all that. I have a hard enough time doing all this, but it is I went to the University of Baltimore in the early 90s. I'm a background journalist, lifer communicator and all of that, and I thought I was going to be a newspaper writer all of my life. And the skill sets and the different writing is the background for every basis of every persuasive thing I sell for a living and but the writing part of it and the reading part of it just as a basis of everything we do in our society. I feel like it can't be stressed enough. I mean, and I know by the time people get to you they're reading and writing by the time they get to the collegiate level, but it just starts so early everywhere in our city. And I think that that's something that the universities here have really tried to stretch out as being community members to try to reach out in a literacy way and a
Mhm,
communication way to lift the community. That's what the universities are here to do. Hopefully, not seed students to go elsewhere and live. Hopefully, they come here and want to move into Bolton Hill and go on their pathway to being a professor and then change the world the way you're trying to
mhm.
do.
Well, you're absolutely right. By the time the students get to us, they are they have developed their writing, but it changes and the different ways that you need to write and communicate change, and that's what we prepare them for. And that's what goes back to that thinking, the way in which they think critically, because your writing is going to change. The needs for the type of writing that you do is going to be different along your entire path. I'm sure that now you're writing differently than you did when you started out first as a journalist. So we try to
I have spell check now.
yeah.
I'm a guy that had the thesaurus on my desk. Now, if I want a word for magnificent, I'll just Google it. I
Or
mean,
you can just go, yeah, click down and look for a synonym for
but
it.
the tools too, even
Mhm,
AI, someone my age would say, oh, that tricky science. It's kind of like when the internet came out. I think all of us, as we get older, have to adapt. Young people, they were just born with the tablet, right? So it's a whole different thing than even a pencil and a pen and an eraser. And God forbid when they flunk me out of typing class because I'm missing a finger and they put the piece of paper under and we had the white paper, just
yes,
making a mistake
yes.
was very costly. One flying
Mhm,
cap from your background and my background of being a writer at a typewriter,
Mhm.
one flying cap took a lot of effort to fix. Things are very pliable now, and I think young people are more pliable in that way.
They are, but that's one of the things that worries me, though, is with their use of and their dependence on the computers and technology, and even with the onset of AI, is the impact that it's going to have on our young people's abilities to think critically and to think analytically while they're trying to solve some of the complex problems that they're going to be taxed with solving when they graduate. And one of the ways that we're dealing with that here at Coppin, and one of the initiatives that Dr. Jenkins is helping to promote, is that we now have our honors students. We're piloting it this year, but our honors students have gotten together and they are identifying a problem that is prevalent for their generation and for their population. They've identified a problem. And over the course of the year, from their varied disciplinary perspectives, they are going to nuance this problem and they're going to try to solve it and offer some solutions to solving it. And they're going to create a social media campaign where they talk about it and they're going to write about it. And they're going to write about it from their different disciplinary perspectives. And what we're trying to do here is to address that concern that students had about workforce preparedness and also combat what we are concerned about, which is their dependence on technology and AI, and then still force them to be able to think critically about it and solve some of these problems. So that's one of the ways that we are trying to be deliberate about combating one of these issues that we see confronting this particular generation of students.
Is that's got to be wildly different than when you began teaching Zora Neale Hurston's work? And by the way, I read Their Eyes Were Watching God. I actually read it. I didn't cliff note it. I cliff noted some East of
Look at
Eden and a couple.
you.
But I did. But to your point, the AI part of this, from a teaching perspective, I'm thinking they used to sell turn papers on the black market back in my day, 40 years ago.
Yes.
Now it's like doing your own work, doing your own thinking, right? Because all of it is accessible. I mean, I remember when calculators came along, we were all worried about how we were going to do math because it just became so easy to push a button and not calculate it. And the thinking part of that. But when you were teaching that sort of literature in your rookie year, 3, 4 years ago of teaching
Yes.
young people, that it would move to this during your tenure as really a professor, but more than that, as a provost now, right?
It's very different. And to give you an idea of how long I've been doing it, I remember when I first started as a professor years ago in 1995, 96, at Florida State. Um, there's a student I had, and now his son is at Florida State, to give you an idea. And I'm thinking how different it is from when I was teaching them from the book, from the Norton anthology. We're reading the stories, and I mean the text. We're talking about it. I still have the book. Anquan Bolden was one of my
There
was
you
one of
go,
my
back shoulder.
yes. He
Ah,
was one of
I
my
wrote a
students.
book about him and his
Let me tell
happy
you, he
ending.
was one of my
Yes.
students. And one day he was at the White House Easter egg hunt one time that I went to, and I'd taken my family, and I saw him, and he recognized me right away. And I go, and my son, when I tell you, my stock rose as a mom with my son because
Well, we
she
got to
knew
get
Antoine.
Q back to the Coppin State campus is what we need to do.
Look, well, Antoine, I still have the blue book that he wrote his test questions out on when he was in my class. So now imagine if his son or if his child was in my classroom, were in my classroom now, I would be giving him or her a test in a completely different way than I did the dad, writing on a blue book. And now everything is remote and everything is on the computer and they have access to technology. So teaching has really changed, but what has remained consistent is my challenging them to think beyond the box,
Well,
not
10
even out.
minutes ago, you had me
Yes,
coming back to Coppin. I was
you
going to
need to
give the whole
come.
career away and go into the future of AI and computer science. Maybe do something with my life at this
That's
point. But
you should
but
come on
now
back
I'm
and
getting it down. I'm all
look.
intimidated by the technology curve
And
of
we
all
have
of
the
this.
best faculty members here who can make sure that when you finish that degree, you will be ready for the world
Well, my
of
writing will be
AI.
a lot better than it was, and my writing wasn't bad back in the day. But I think I've improved with my wisdom as the gray comes in here. And to your point, when you live a little bit, when
Yes.
you've been in Churchill's bunker, when
Hmm.
you've been in Anne Frank's
That's right.
bedroom, after reading stories about it and living it a little bit, and seeing what the pyramids look like and what it took to build them, right?
I went back and read and looked at some of Hurston's work since I walked around the corner to her house. I've gone back and I've looked at some of Frederick Douglass's work, knowing that he was a slave on the ships here in Baltimore. Going back and looking at some of Harriet Tubman's contributions to history, having gone to where she lived when I went to on the Eastern Shore.
That's an
So
incredible thing to do over there. That whole trail. It's such a beautiful part of our
it
state that
really
people pass
is.
by. The Blackwater, just all of it. You could spend 3, 4 days down there, never see the same bird twice. I
Yeah,
mean, just
so
it's a
it
beautiful
is.
part of our state.
It really is. And so I'm enjoying that part of just getting to know Maryland the way that I am.
Rich history here. I mean,
Yes,
there's
it
no
is.
question, especially for someone like you on the writing side of Edgar Allan Poe and H.L. Mencken on my side, working at the Sun. It has been a pleasure to get to know you a little bit. I'm going to let you go back and be the interim provost and vice president of academic affairs. We can't hold you forever. Dr. Chanta Haywood is here as part of our partnership with Coppin State University, getting to know people here in the community and folks coming through. We are very appreciative of Dr. Jenkins and everybody over the whole team over there and all we do with flagship radio, with sports. We're trying to move to the community and talk about things. Hey, I love, being an English guy and being a communications guy and joking about the cliff notes I read versus the books that I read. It was always the books that I read. I mentioned Catcher in the Rye just earlier,
Yes.
that I owe so much to my professors
Hmm.
and English teachers. I've had many of them still with us back on the show to even talk at larger lengths about. So what was the Catcher in the Rye really about? You read it when you were 15. How does it change during the course of lifetime? And you're saying you've studied these authors from a century ago, and it still changes your perspective when you put the cook in the kitchen 100 years
Absolutely.
later, right?
It still does. It still changes. And even my research is on Black women who were preaching during and after slavery.
I saw your book on
Yeah. And
Amazon on that. That seems
yeah,
like a really heavy study that you
it is.
did.
But even that um, has my perspective has changed because some of the work that some of them were doing was done here in this area.
We're
So
talking about citizenship, let alone voting
yes,
rights, right?
that's
Like
right.
we're talking about things that did not seem possible at
That's
that
right.
time, right?
That's
Not to
right.
mention punishable by death by anything, but just that it was inconceivable
It
that
was
someone like you could
inconceivable.
live the life that you've led.
Absolutely, especially with some of these women and with their whole humanity, their humanness being questioned, and you're not even considered human, and but to have the spiritual inclination that you've been called to preach, it's just amazing. So getting the opportunity to know that they were up here, they were in Baltimore, they're in Philadelphia, DC, and all of these places, it really has an impact on my perspective of them.
Well, and my 2 cents on the political landscape, and everybody knows they know a dollar's worth, not just 2 cents worth, that we're about to enter a period of time here where the people would want to ban those books. Those
Yes.
books, and that's got to stop. That's on our next episode when you and I get
Okay.
together. We'll do that over a crab
We'll
cake.
do that over crab
We'll
cakes.
do
Let's
that
do
over.
that.
We'll do that over proper crab cake.
Don't think that I forgot.
Shanta Haywood is here. I'll even drag you over toward the Morgan campus over to Coco's if we have to do that, or down to the Inner Harbor to Fadley's. But we're going to be doing a bunch of crab cakes during the holiday. I'm going to get Dr. Jenkins to come back out with us, as well as basketball getting going. I saw our basketball doctor, Larry Stewart, over at State Fair about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago over on the west side of town as well. So big appreciation to all of our partners and everything that's going on over at Coppin State University. You can learn about their sports at CoppinStateSports.com. You can tune in here at AM 1570 and hear a bunch of things like like that. But more than that, proper conversations about what they really do over Coppin, which is educating young folks, make them
That's right.
get them out into the world, get them employed so that we can have a bigger, better culture here in Baltimore. We're always working on that. She's the interim provost and vice president of academic affairs. That is a mouthful. She's
Hmm.
now our friend and our crab cake conspirator at some point around here, Dr. Chanta Haywood. I am Nestor. We do sports around here. We do a whole bunch of things. We do our Maryland Crab Cake Tour presented by the Maryland Lottery and our friends at the we have the Raven scratch offs. There are no scented tickets this holiday season. I keep expressing my dismay to the executive director of all things Maryland. And I did hold him accountable this week for not doing scented tickets. And I said next year we're doing eggnog just to spite him. And our friends also at Jiffy Lube Multi-Care who power Luke up back and forth from Owings Mills to downtown and all around as we get you ready for another Ravens game this weekend. I am Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking. Baltimore positive. Stay with us.